Hello and welcome to Nighthawk Racing, hashtag F1RST, Season 3, Round 5, this week at Daytona Tri-Oval. And again, it's my pleasure and I'm joined with co-commentator Kirk.
Wow. Thank you for having me back again. This week we're at Daytona, as Sarah said, tri-oval layout. It's certainly going to see a lot of action here tonight and maybe a bit of on-track action.
Yes, and before we get into the more detailed kind of event format of tonight, just going to give you a brief kind of overview of the season and the championship before I hand over to Kirk. So, as you can see, we are round 5 of 10. We've got a 10 race championship, so plenty more racing still in store. The lobby is split in two lobbies. We've got the red lobby and the blue lobby. Tonight we'll be watching the red lobby around the oval. We have over 30 drivers registered in the championship. And just a basic event format for tonight, we have the sprint race up first. We then have the qualifying, which will set the grid for the feature race. And after the quali, it then leads us perfectly on to that feature race, the highlight of the night. And as you can see with the calendar, we are in round 5. Next round, we are over to Japan and over to Autopolis. But I'm going to hand over to Kirk, who will explain a little bit in a bit more detail about the event format for tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. So starting tonight, we have a 18-lap sprint race before qualifying. This is the grid for this race will be determined on reverse average points scored per round, with fuel being set at 100%. And I know for me, when I was racing in the blue lobby, I had to do a little bit of fuel saving to get to the end, so it could be a little bit marginal on fuel. After the sprint race, we'll go straight into a 10-minute qualifying. Again, we're going to see a lot of strategy here for qualifying because everybody's going to be looking for that slipstream to be able to get a fastest lap possible. Although maybe on a track like this, qualifying position isn't possibly the most important thing. And then after that, we'll go on to our feature race, which will be 75 laps of non-stop on-track action. We do have rules in place for wet weather, although I'm pretty sure we won't see any weather changes today. But just in case we do get any weather, if the moisture bar goes over a third full, um, then the two tire rule goes out the window, and you can use whatever strategy you want. Going on from the tire rule, all drivers will still be expected to use at least 2 different compounds of tire during this race, whether it be soft, medium hard, or hard soft. Um, just all part of our rules to keep strategy open and plenty of on-track action. We'll also, as I mentioned, fuel usage is on. Again, this could be your greatest ally, as if you're in a bit of a slipstream train, you should be able to save a little bit of fuel. And the more fuel you save, Sarah, the less time you have to lose in the pit lane refueling.
Yes, that's going to be crucial here tonight, as it's a slightly kind of different style of racing that we've got coming up. But before we get into the race and before we see the grid that we've got tonight, let's have a quick little look at the points. And as you can see, the sprint race, if you come home in first, you get 22 points. All the way down to 16th, you get 1 point. And the driver that achieves the fastest lap in the sprint race gets 1 bonus point. And in the feature, the points are almost doubled, with first place coming home with 45 points, all the way down to 16th with 3 points in total. And again, the driver that gets the fastest lap in the feature race gets 2 bonus points, as well as obviously in qualifying, the top 3 drivers do get some bonus points as well. Right, so as you can see today, we are at Daytona, the tri-oval layout. We were here last week for the road course, so a little bit different style of racing that we're going to see here tonight, Kirk. But what's your thoughts about the track? Any track facts that you feel the viewers would like to know?
Well, a lap of Daytona is roughly 2.5 miles long. And if we times 2.5 times by 70, well, times by 75, which is the amount of laps, our drivers will be doing about 187 miles in the feature race tonight, while just turning left. So there's a lot of left-hand turns, and a few more left-hand turns after that, Sarah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Obviously, I think if you're on a wheel setup, yeah, your arms are going to be aching, especially that left arm towards the end. But yeah, some may say, this we're going to kind of lean into a little bit more of the NASCAR style of racing. But we could see some drivers excel in these sort of NASCAR, bump drafting, getting in the slipstream. It'll be interesting to see how the drivers kind of adapt to this style of racing. But obviously, in real life as well, Daytona, it's got a major event of the Daytona 500. We see it kind of annually, the NASCARs turning left multiple times. But yeah, I'm excited to see how the drivers kind of, like I said, adapt to the oval as I think a strategy will 100%, be on the driver's mind. If they can get behind another driver, great, save some fuel. But if not, it's gonna be it's gonna be tight on a few cars. And obviously, we can't forget that with the recent GT7 update, some cars have their top end speed has been reduced just that a little bit, so we may see some cars struggle. But I don't know about you, Kirk. Enough said. I think we should go and see who we've got on the grid tonight and get into the sprint race.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been itching to get into this since we started. As you were saying, seeing some cars who have reduced top speed since the update. Um, so some cars like the BRZ of Kulios, it might struggle around here, while other cars like the McLarens are both the McLaren at Midnight and LB Lewis might do very well around here as they are quite fast.
Yeah, maybe we might see a couple of McLarens on the podium, but we all know we've all seen kind of movies with NASCAR. It takes one crash into a wall and it could end, a few drivers' races. But yep, let's get into it. Let's see the drivers and the cars on the grid.
Okay, so starting on pole tonight in our sprint race, we have Kulios in the BRZ. The BLZ since the update has had a bit of a nerf for the top speed, so he could struggle here tonight in both the sprint and feature race. In P2 we have Yvonne, probably starting in prime position to be a real contender to win this sprint race here tonight. Maybe doesn't have the outright top speed to be able to properly challenge the McLarens during the race, but maybe she can get a good slingshot off the final corner for the run up to line to be able to challenge uh, yeah, McLaren driver, or either of the McLaren drivers. In third, we have Max Velocity or Velocidad. After two impressive rounds at Monza and then Daytona road course, he sees himself being promoted up to the Red Lobby tonight. Hopefully, we'll see plenty of positive things to help him retain his place next week in the Red Lobby. In fourth, we have LB Lewis. Again, it's been a bit of a mainstay in the Red Lobby this season. Had some very impressive drives and had some very impressive results. Maybe beating some of the faster drivers by just being clean, consistent, and quick. I'm sure if he can keep in touch with the front pack, he can certainly score some impressive points again here tonight. Then in P5 we have Coach, another one of the drivers who have been a bit of a mainstay in Red Lobby this season. And again, I'm sure if he can keep in touch with that main lead pack, there's no reason why he possibly couldn't be challenging here for a podium, Sarah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Kind of starting mid pack is can see that all the chaos ensue either in front or behind him. But talking about behind him, we have Midnight ISO in P6. Again, like you say, the McLarens seem to be the favourites round here tonight. So will Midnight be able to climb the other five in front of him and claim that top spot on the podium? In P7, just behind, we have one of our very own Nighthawk admin in Pedro in that Mercedes AMG. Again, he'll be looking to have a strong round here. And, he's got Midnight alongside him. Will they kind of, help each other out? Obviously, different cars, slightly probably different top end speed. But just behind them, we have got in P8, we've got Sophia. And last week at the road course, we had Sophia a double win in the sprint and the feature. So potentially, it could be a favourite to get on or near the podium, but the Corvette might might put on the back foot and might make the kind of the charge up to the lead a little bit more difficult. But in P9 and back off of holiday, we have the Dark Lord in the BMW M6. Again, looking to kind of worm his way through the pack, try and get in or around the podium, and kind of make up for the points that he may have missed in the previous round. But all in all, a good grid, and I'm excited to see how they all get on. Don't know about you, Kirk, but I think we should go and watch the sprint race and see how all the drivers got on.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll see plenty of action here tonight. Maybe a spill or two as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we're in for an exciting night.
Okay, so starting us off tonight, we have Kyrgios in first in the BRZ. It'll be certainly interesting to see where he can finish tonight. Obviously, that BRZ not the greatest car when it comes to top line speed. In second, we have Yvonne and Max Velocity in third. Everybody tucks in single file as they all try and get a bit of a slipstream on each other. Are we go as we approach turn one? Are we going to see any overtakes? Max Velocity closing in on Yvonne, looking to go around the outside of Yvonne. But obviously Yvonne has the advantage as she's still in the slipstream of Koulios. As we look behind, we have a few drivers starting to go 2 wide. As we go 3 wide for the lead of the race, that McLaren, Max Velocity taking the lead. Maybe Koulios squeezed LB Lewis into the wall there ever so slightly, as it looked like there's a little bit of contact between the two drivers as LB Lewis comes past. As we exit turn 2, we have Yvonne, Sophia, Coach, and Midnight with Pedro all going side by side, 2 wide. As we see the front 2 drivers of Max Velocity and LB Lewis possibly doing a little bit of bump drafting there to try and break away from the rest of the pack, Sarah.
Yeah, and Sophia was climbed a lot of spaces there. It looked like kind of Coach, Midnight, and Pedro went on that high line, but it looked like there was a little bit of contact to the wall, just a bit of grazing. But Sophia on the low line managed to tuck up behind Koulios and is looking to try and get that third place. But as you can see, Koulios' Subaru at the moment is lacking on that top end speed, but he's trying his best to hold that podium. But yeah, everyone getting away nice and clean on lap number 1. Midnight onto the outside of Sophia now. Will he be able to get it done? They're going 3 wide over the start finish straight. Pedro being a good sportsman, pushing Koulios as well, trying to see if he can keep Koulios in the running for just that little bit longer. But yeah, Midnight up into third. So it's going to be one of those races where the driver's definitely going to make us, work hard. Lots of drivers are going to be swapping positions, and yeah, it's gonna be fun. But it seems everyone, lap number 3, this race will probably go flyby. But everyone just behind as well, we've got a little pack of Yvonne, Coach, Pedro, and Koulios. Yeah, unfortunately, with that Subaru, you can just see Koulios just struggling to kind of keep up with the cars in front.
Yeah, obviously the shorter gear ratios isn't doing his fuel consumption any help, as well as he's already used a lot more fuel than the drivers around him. It seems like our lead 2 McLarens have certainly broken away from the rest of the pack, and it seems like Midnight and Sophia have also got their own little mini breakaway going on from Pedro and Coach behind. It seems like Koulios has kind of, obviously Koulios starting in first place, he's kind of been the cork in the bottle, so to say, as it seems like he's played a little bit of a hand in allowing the top 4 drivers to get their own little breakaway going.
Yeah, like you say, perfectly put, cork in the bottle. He got the drivers to tuck in behind him, but because of obviously that lack of top end speed, did keep him behind for a lap or so. As we see drivers going on to lap number 4, I think we're going to see Yvonne also making a move on Koulios here, going to the slightly higher line. But yeah, a battle still out front between the 2 McLarens. But like you say, little battles between. We've got the Mercedes battle as well between Coach and Pedro about to brew. But yeah, I think all the drivers pretty close to each other. Although we've got the Dark Lord into the pits, possibly an early retirement or a little bit of damage. But yeah, unfortunate for him.
It's a shame you obviously never see it to happen. You never like to see it happen, but obviously around here is probably the track where a DNF is probably most likely to happen, as barring any big accidents, you're really stuck as into what you can do to recover from a poor start. It was also interesting to see it front on that previous lap, a battle between our two first and second place drivers. As we see behind Midnight ISO and Sophia possibly looking to go side by side. But that's the problem. If you battle round here, you're almost guaranteed to lose time to either the drivers in front who are bump drafting, or the drivers behind you, which are bump drafting, Sarah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's going to be difficult, and I think the drivers will kind of use this like normal. They use this sprint race to kind of see which driver is willing to give them a little bit of a bump draft, kind of which drivers are going to tuck in the slipstream. So I think a lot of drivers will be using this as data gathering yet again. But Koulios has managed to keep up with the likes of Pedro and Coach, and it looks like Coach on the back foot a little bit here, and Koulios bump drafts in Pedro a little bit now. So out of somewhere, Koulios has found a little bit of speed in that Subaru. As we
Yeah,
see Yvonne.
absolutely. Oh, maybe a little bit of desync problems between Yvonne and Coach there. Obviously, Coach being from North America and Yvonne being from Europe. Maybe a little bit of latency issues there between the two drivers. Um, it also seems like maybe Pedro could be catching up ever so slightly to the battling drivers of Midnight and Sophia, as more time they spend battling, the more time it allows the drivers behind to catch up to for the battle for third place, Sarah.
Yeah, and it looks like the battle for third between Sophia and Midnight is still definitely on the cards. But I think the Corvette and especially the Subaru might struggle a little bit on fuel towards the end, as we're only kind of 8 laps in. We've still got 10 laps to go, and as you can see, Sophia already on half a tank, so it's going to be difficult for some of the cars, especially the more kind of gas guzzling cars, as we see Sophia kind of pop her head out to that high line, Midnight remaining on the low line. But it's kind of it's going to be kind of a game of cat and mouse. Drivers going to the high line, they might not get the raw speed as opposed to the low line. And slipstream, like you said earlier, is going to be key, as we see all the drivers pretty close to each other. Pedro giving a little bump draft to Midnight. Can that see Midnight and Pedro break away a little bit from Sophia?
Also looks like they've this little pack that's battling for third place has also dropped a car behind Coach, and Coach has fallen off the back of this pack ever so slightly. Obviously, that's not going to do his race any favors, and you can only hope that maybe there's a little bit of drama or something like up ahead, which should allow him to hopefully catch up. As we see
Oh my god.
Yvonne having a bit of a nightmare, a little bit of latency issues there from Yvonne.
I was gonna say that was a rocket ship, not a 911. Just teleporting in front of this little pack here definitely caught me by surprise. But and I think that caught Sophia by surprise as well, as she was gonna go for the overtake, or tried to, on the Pedro and Midnight in front. But yeah, getting caught out a little bit by Yvonne. But yeah, like you say, the battle for third place, it's definitely not over yet, and I think it's on the cards for anyone to get a podium or a win here. If you keep that foot on the accelerator and you keep turning left, I'm sure you're gonna have a good race.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously around here, all it takes is one good slingshot off coming off the final corner, and you're certainly going to have yourself a nice run up towards the line, which I'm sure the drivers will be starting to practice coming towards the end of this race. Looking at about 8 laps to go. Um, it. I think I remember. I remember trying it in my in the blue lobby sprint race, trying to figure out that slingshot. I think that gap to the car in front before the slingshot, you really want to be at about just under 2/10 or just over 2/10. As it also looks like Koulios is now lost touch to the front pack, which has also cost Yvonne a lot of time as well towards that battling pack for third position, Sarah.
Yeah, kind of acting like that little bit of a cork in the bottle again, or Kuliov trying to be the widest Subaru ever, preventing, you know, trying not to lose yet another space. But unfortunately, I think that top end of the Subaru after the physics change, it's just meant that Kulios is on the back foot as we see Coach overtaking Kulios now. Maybe Coach having a little bit of an issue on the first couple of laps, seemed to really drop back from the pack in front. But all is to play for the rest of the sprint, and especially the feature and qualifying, obviously. But yeah, a little bit of bump drafting between Midnight and Pedro here. They're trying their best to try and break away from Sophia, but going back to your point, I think it's all about respect, and I think the drivers have got a lot of respect. They know that they don't want to kind of ruin each other's race. They want to play a smart kind of calculated race by bump drafting, slipstreaming. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for the rest of the race, and kind of will some drivers, owe their podium spots to the drivers that are willing to help them out. Oh, as we see Max Velocity having a big spin. I'm not sure if there's a bit of contact there or kind of. I think he may have a flat tire on that right hand side rear. So yeah, unfortunately, flat tire might lose he might lose a podium here because of that. As we see Midnight, Pedro, and Sophia fastly approaching, and they do overtake. So very unfortunate for Max Velocity there, and I'm sure after that he'll be recalculating his strategy for the feature race.
Absolutely. Obviously, that rear right tire is completely worn down to the canvas. Obviously, and you can't really put much load onto that tire now, otherwise you will just lose full control of the vehicle. It's unfortunate to happen, but now maybe the battle for the lead is now back on. As if Midnight Iso and Pedro can work together, maybe they can get the speed necessary to be able to catch up to the leader of LB Lewis, who is now running by himself with nobody to bump draft.
Yeah, the Nighthawk team, working together, Pedro and Midnight, giving bump drafting to each other, and obviously Pedro in the slipstream of Midnight as well. But yeah, I think LB Lewis. Unfortunately, obviously, no one likes to see anyone go out because of flat tires or anything like that. But it will give LB Lewis a little bit of breathing room, and 3 laps towards the end now, he could be smiling ear to ear that he's got this win secured. But I think he'll now be kind of checking his tire wear as well, making sure that he's got enough to get him through to that finish line.
Yeah. Also, looking at fuel wise, it looks like maybe Sophia could be under threat from now from Max Velocity, as her fuel is now almost in the red compared to Max Velocity, who still has a quarter of a tank left. And it's a very similar situation to the drivers in front of Sophia, where all three of them have about a quarter tank of fuel left, where she's in the red, she's in the warning zone for fuel.
Yeah, and obviously we've still got 2 laps towards the end, so it's going to be very tight for Sophia here. And just having a quick look at the lap times of Midnight and Pedro, they are gaining on LB Lewis. So unfortunately, LB Lewis may be struggling with a little bit of tyre wear and trying to conserve that fuel just a little bit. But he's going to be under threat for Midnight. He might have just done enough. I think he's only got 2 more laps, so as long as he can keep that foot all the way down on the accelerator, he should secure that P1. But I think he'll know. Obviously, Midnight and Pedro aren't slow. They're going to try and catch him up with these 2 remaining laps. And obviously, I'm on board with Midnight, looking behind Pedro, having a little glance to the outside, but remaining behind Midnight. And yeah, across the board, obviously Max Velocity in a little bit of a battle with Sophia here, but Sophia compared to Max Velocity has got a lot of Sophia into the pits with a 1 lap, well, 2 laps to go with 1% fuel. So unfortunately, that Corvette, gas guzzling car, is meant that she has to come and pit and pick on some more fuel.
Not to take away from what you said, Sarah, but two cars working together will always go quicker than one car by itself, especially on an oval. Obviously, it's obviously with Pedro in the slipstream bumping Midnight. we see that them two can achieve a higher top speed than what LB Lewis can do on his own, which will explain why they are running about a second a lap faster than LB Lewis.
Very true. But obviously, it doesn't take it anything away from LB Lewis as well. The kind of the sterling job that he's done. He's gone on to his final lap, and I'm sure he'll be counting down the left hand turns to when he crosses that finish line and comes home in first. And I'm sure he's going to be very, very happy about that indeed. But going back to Sophia, I'm surprised, we don't see a lot of people pitting for fuel in the sprint race, especially. And even on 100% fuel, that Corvette was just a little bit too gas guzzling and didn't bring her towards the end of the race.
Maybe not enough fuel saving when she was in the slipstream of the likes of Pedro and Midnight ISO, or maybe she just left it a little bit too late to save fuel. As we see LB Lewis taking a win in the red lobby in this sprint race as he crossed the line to finish first with Midnight ISO and Pedro, although working together, not quite quick enough to be able to catch LB Lewis. As we see Max Velocity take fourth after that spin, Yvonne in fifth, Coach in sixth, Sophia taking seventh, and then Koulios finishing in P8. There's certainly a lot of on-track action today in this sprint race, and maybe LB Lewis was sweating there ever so slightly coming towards the end of that race. Obviously, with Midnight ISO and Pedro working together to close that gap up, it's Lewis didn't have his partner in a velocity anymore since that spin.
Yeah, and it looks like Koulios might have had a spin as well, as he really dropped off from the rest of the pack. And very limited on fuel as well. But yes, Sophia coming across the line with 0% fuel as well. I think it's going to be tough for the feature race for both Koulios and Sophia. Now, obviously, 18 laps done and dusted of the oval. They've now got 75 laps to do. I think their strategies are going to be a bit unique, shall we say, because of the cars that they are driving. But yeah, all in all, like you say, a good sprint race. And as you can see, kind of drivers willing to work with each other to kind of get the best result. Although I think max velocity at P4 is nothing to frown about. After what could have been a race ending spin, he managed to get the best result out of that.
Max Velocity obviously chose the wrong tyre to start the race on. Them soft tyres just wearing out a bit too fast, which gave him little to no confidence to really use them on the banking. He had to be very gentle with the steering, as if he put a little bit too much force into the steering wheel, he would have lost the rear of the car. To finish P4, I'm sure he can't complain with that. Obviously, Sophia didn't manage to save enough fuel, which promoted him up to P4. So a very happy sprint race for him, and P4 in the red lobby is certainly nothing to stick your nose up at, even if it's a bit of a gimmick track such as Daytona Oval.
Yeah, I'm sure Max Velocity will be very happy with a P4 in his first kind of red lobby adventure. But obviously, sprint race done and dusted. I think we should go and watch a bit of the quali, see where everyone's starting for the feature race, and kind of see the tyre strategy that the drivers have gone for. As like I said, the strategy is going to be a bit unique, and as we've seen, 18 laps of kind of NASCAR style of racing. I think some drivers have adapted to it quite well. And obviously, some I think we use the qualifying as a little bit more practice and kind of see where they can improve. But I don't know about you, Kirk. Let's go see where everyone qualified.
Let's go. And after qualifying, we have Yvonne, who managed to play it on pole, and possibly putting herself in prime position to be over the challenge for a podium here. Then we have the Dark Lord, or Louis, in second. And that BMW putting in a very impressive time. Maybe not the car that has the highest overall top speed, but he certainly managed to find a draft partner to work with in qualifying. In P3, we have Pedro in the Mercedes, Fourth, we have Midnight, and fifth, we have Coach. All separated by less than a tenth of a second, might I add.
Yeah, very impressive indeed. And in P6, we then have Max Velocity. In P7, we have LB Lewis, our sprint race winner. In P8, we have Sophie, who's managed to jump in for the feature race after having a little bit of technical difficulties. In P9, we then have Sophia, and P10, we have Koulios. And all of the grid only separated by 1.2 seconds, so all the drivers had a pretty good qualifying session, it looks like.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
Yeah, let's go. Let's shake and bake. Lights out and away we go. All the drivers. Sophia getting a beautiful start there. Manages to worm her way in between two cars and looking to help Yvonne get into that first place and stick there for a little bit longer. But yeah, it looks like all the drivers. Sophia picking up a 1 second penalty. But not deadline. Dark Lord managing to get on the back of Sophie here. Although it does look Yvonne is still struggling with a little bit of connection issues, but that does help to kind of bunch the pack up a little bit. But yeah, on to lap number 1 of 75. Like you said earlier, Kirk, the drivers will be driving well over 100 miles of Daytona, and I'm sure towards the end, the drivers will be kind of sick of only turning left. But in pole position and in second place, we have the United Sim team and the two Inner eSports drivers managing to stick in P1 and P2. But like I say, just behind we have the Dark Lord and the rest of the pack, bunching up, looking to try and get to that first place, which all the drivers want to do. But it'll be about kind of sticking in the slipstream and helping each other out. But it's anyone's game so far. Kirk, anyone kind of caught your eye or anything kind of happening towards the back of the grid?
Not a lot has really kicked off. All our drivers, or the majority of our grid, are still within this main pack at the front here. Obviously, big loser being Sophia. Obviously, picking up that 1 second penalty. I didn't quite see what she picked it up for. I think she might have possibly gone under the apron ever so slightly to pick up that penalty. But at the front, I'm not sure if I'd want to be in at the front early on in this race. So obviously, we've got a long ways to go. Obviously, if you're sat in that mid pack, although there is a higher chance of possibly dropping out of the slipstream of the front drivers, always we see a little bit of contact there between Sophie and the Dark Lord. But it seems like there may be a little bit of connection issues as we see Midnight ISO sneak up the inside of Dark Lord as well as Pedro. We see that high line not quite working there for the BMW driver. But back to what I was saying, I'd probably want to be in. Oh, as we see the two United Sim team going into the wall, but I think they may be having a little bit of desync problems there, Sarah.
Yeah, again, it looked like kind of the drivers were kind of pinging left, right, and centre, and were in some rocket ships as opposed to the Ferrari and the Porsche, but still working together in P3 and P5. But that has helped Midnight out massively, getting into pole position or in first place with Pedro, the other Nighthawk driver, just behind. I'm sure, like in the sprint race, they'll be willing to help each other out, and also Pedro and Midnight are former roadblock teammates, so they're used to kind of helping each other out, and they know each other quite well, so there's a lot of respect there. As I'm sure across the grid that we've seen already in the sprint races, a lot of respect amongst the drivers, and like we said earlier, it's going to be who can kind of help each other out. And but going back to what you said, it's this early on. Obviously, we can't call it. It's very early to call it's gonna kind of come out on top. But I think, like you said, being in first now, it might not be the best position, as you're gonna burn a little bit more fuel. You're not in anyone's stream. But if P2 can bump you along a little bit, it does kind of generate enough of a gap that you have a little bit of breathing room. As we see, Sophie pop in and out of LB Lewis's car there, and it does look like Yvonne has had a little bit of contact with the wall, although I'm not quite sure, as again we're temporarily in a rocket ship and not a Porsche 911. But going back to P1 and P2, it does look like Pedro, tucking in fully behind Midnight. No intentions to overtake him as yet, but yeah, I think this is kind of an alliance that we're going to see throughout the duration of the event. I don't know about you, but I think the sparks coming off of the rear of the cars is very beautiful, and not something that we get to
Absolutely.
see very often.
Yeah, obviously the high banking of the oval bottoms the cars out ever so slightly, and obviously which causes them to spark a lot around the corners, which obviously lights it up and they're pretty cool to see. Talking about the desync problems and rocket ships, on board with Yvonne, her speedo went up to about 430 miles an hour. Of something that's not quite achievable in these cars in a normal situation, normal
No,
circumstances, should I say?
yeah, I don't know what sort of fuel that she put in that 911, but yeah, temporarily being a rocket ship and going up to kind of very very fast. I'm not sure, the the driver and that G-force going that fast would be able to cope with that. But yeah, unfortunately, obviously, no one likes to see connective issues, but they are handling it quite well at the moment, running P6 and P7, the two United Sim Team and Elite Esports drivers. But yeah, everyone else, tucking in behind each other, kind of setting up those early alliances. And we, LB Lewis, our sprint race winner, is currently in a little bit of a pack with Max Velocity, the Dark Lord, and Sophie, who looks to go to that high line. We have the Dark Lord and Max Velocity also battling it out, and Sophie looking to try and get involved in this little bit of a battle, as we potentially could
But
see them go three wide.
the battling between themselves is allowing the likes of Midnight ISO and Pedro at the front there to break away. Um, and it looks like they possibly have come out of slipstream range of the drivers behind them. Um, Obviously, the battling they doing now, more they battle, the less they can focus on catching the two drivers at the front up, which has allowed them to pretty much sneak away up front, out front, Sarah.
Yeah, and I think Midnight and Pedro would be very happy about that. That they've got that little bit of breathing room. They can bump draft and slipstream each other until their first kind of pit stop, when that might change. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, we don't see it very often, but the hard tire kind of being the tire choice of tonight, as especially because of the new updated physics as well. A lot of drivers having that little bit more confidence and speed on those hard tires around here.
Yeah, obviously, we saw in the sprint race that the soft tires wasn't lasting with the fuel tank, which kind of makes them redundant. Because obviously, if once you reach the state where they are completely worn, you are just running on bold tires pretty much. Well, bold tires on the canvas, to where there's very little grip and slightest import, and you could see yourself spinning out. As it looks like that our third, fourth, and fifth place drivers have managed to bridge the gap up to the first and second, and got that train back up and running, Sarah.
Yeah, it looks well. We did just say, obviously, in the sprint race as well, and when we were looking through the drivers, that McLaren, it must be well suited to this track, because it's over the last couple of races, especially. Well, obviously, as a McLaren driver myself, it's been a bit kind of touch and go with performance. It's some tracks it suits it really well, other tracks not so much. But round here, it's on a whole other level. Midnight and Max Velocity and LB Lewis quite comfortably running in around the podium. So yeah, I mean, the McLarens are, the drivers especially, will be enjoying this race. They are the ones to beat.
And like we're missing a few of the big heavy hitters tonight, such as your Kia Kais and your Swizzies, it could open up to see some unusual faces on the podium, even in the feature race. Like obviously we saw in the sprint race, seeing LB Lewis win it. Um, there's no reason why we couldn't see a driver who isn't usually up towards the front of the pack being able to challenge and pick up some very big points tonight.
Yeah, like you say, kind of another one's um opportunity is someone else can gain on that opportunity. Like you say, the likes of Swizzy, Katie the Kai not being able to race tonight, that does open up the doors, especially in the championship, but also drivers to have personal best results. Obviously, we have LB Lewis, winning the sprint race, and it looks, Midnight and Pedro quite strong around this track. So we could see, the people that are kind of in or around the podium spots in the championship really claim some big and major and crucial points tonight, which will help them, going into the second half of the championship. Obviously, this round 5, does mark halfway into the championship. So points shortly will become very important to seal their positions.
Absolutely. Um, barring any big mistakes, now it seems like maybe likes of Midnight ISO and Pedro might have been able to break away because they've certainly got quite a big margin on the chasing cars of Dark Lord, LB Lewis, and Max Velocity, Sarah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It looks like the two McLarens of LB Lewis and Max Velocity, they are trying to help each other out, but Dark Lord just seems to have that a little bit more space, compared to the two McLaren drivers. But yeah, I think that the BMW is it is a strong car, but it's going to be tough to kind of keep those two very fast McLarens behind. But we all know Louis, we all know the Dark Lord, how kind of well he's at defending. But around a track like this, it is very hard to defend, your position, because it all kind of relies on slipstream. So if drivers tuck out of that slipstream and they have a little bit more top end speed, it's going to be very hard for Louis to defend here. And he seems to go in the middle. He's opened the door to LB Racing, who's took the opportunity, gone on that inside line. A little tap between the two drivers, but the Dark Lord, getting back into the slipstream of LB Lewis. He's in a little bit of a McLaren sandwich at the moment now, because it does place him between the two McLarens of LB Lewis and Max Velocity. So I think he'll a little bit of strategic play there, letting LB Lewis through, tucking in behind, saving on some fuel and a little bit of tyre wear.
Although I think just going back to what you said about defending and attacking, I think at this stage of the race, obviously very early on, I don't think it really matters that much what position you're in at the moment. I think it's really all about working together to try and. So yeah, I don't think it really matters what position you are in at the moment, Sarah. At this stage of the race, obviously still quite early on. I think you're just trying to work with the drivers around you, try and close up the gaps to the people in front. And certainly the three drivers of LB Lewis, Dark Lord, and Max Velocity will be trying to work together to try and close the gap the best they can to Midnight ISO and Pedro Sarah.
Oh, 100%, yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there. As you can see, by this picture here, how far in front Midnight and Pedro are. So, those drivers are going to really have to try and close up to them if they want any kind of chance of getting either the win or the second spot on the podium. But I think strategy is going to be also an um, important to be considered as well. Obviously, I think Midnight and Pedro are using loads more fuel compared to the rest of the grid, because of considering how fast they're going. So that potentially we may see them two pitting first compared to everyone else. Everyone might be able to go for a kind of a lap or so more. So it's going to be difficult for those two to slot back in. But they've got quite a gap between themselves and LB Lewis at the moment. So yeah, like you say, a lot of drivers, their strategies will come into play, but they really need to close up to Midnight and Pedro, who have 16 laps in, they've managed to get themselves that far in front. As we see, Sophia coming into the pits with 0% fuel. So similar to the sprint race, comes in on lap number 17 with no fuel. So really goes to show how gas guzzling that Corvette is.
I just want to say, it looks like LB Lewis is been doing a lot of conserving in this first stint, as he's still got over a quarter of a tank of fuel left. While same with Max Velocity, he's also got a quarter tank of fuel left. Far the most of anybody within the top five. As we see the Dark Lord coming pitting as well. Um, with only 2% fuel left. So it looks like we've got a range of strategies of some people saving a lot of fuel and some people not saving any fuel at all, Sarah.
No, yeah, I suppose it's that thing that most drivers and drivers' mentality, they won't really at this stage really be thinking about their strategy. They just want to kind of, you know, if they're not working in a pair, they're kind of just working for themselves. They want to try and get as far as front, kind of, put themselves in a comfortable position for their second stint. So a lot of them are kind of being going 100%, not really thinking about strategy at the moment. Although saying that, both United Sim Team and Inner Esports drivers coming in together, so obviously they'll come back out of the pits together. So I think teamwork will definitely play a part, but also, like you said, kind of the drivers they're gonna have to think strategically shortly. As we see Coach started on the softs, manages to get them into 19 laps.
Mm. It certainly seemed as they were in a quite poor condition as he come into the pits. It looks like a lot of people are coming in at the end of this lap as we see Midnight ISO leading the drivers out of the pit stop with Pedro not too far behind, but it doesn't look like Pedro will be within slipstream range of Midnight as they exit the pits. As we see Yvonne and Sophia both coming out a lap down to the likes of LB Lewis and Max Velocity. Obviously, them two drivers saving quite a bit of uh, fuel
I, I
during
don't
this
know
first
about you,
stint.
but
Go.
I've just clocked on that Midnight and Pedro were kind of a whole kind of pit stop. Um, you know, they kind of cleared themselves, so they know that obviously LB Lewis and Max Velocity will be kind of the next drivers certainly to come in. So Midnight and Pedro setting themselves really really nicely for the rest of the race. Obviously, it looks quite close on the screen. Obviously, P1 and P2 just behind P3 and P4. But obviously, we know that the net lead is currently with Midnight and Pedro. Obviously, being the most recent cars to pit. But yeah, they've set themselves really nicely, and teamwork, showing that they've set themselves up nicely. But as it looks like Pedro dips it a little bit into that low line, and big kind of sparks off of that Mercedes. But bump drafting continues again. I'm sure we'll see two McLarens of um, LB Lewis and Max Velocity come in shortly. But yeah, between these top four, it's very close at the moment. But I think my money's on Midnight and Pedro at the moment.
If LB Lewis and Max Velocity can stretch the fuel out to where they don't need to pit again, well, they need to do one less pit stop, then the likes of Midnight ISO and Pedro, they could certainly see themselves up in that front battle with them both, with both Midnight and Pedro. Um, Looking down the rest of the pack, it seems like um the Dark Lord Louis has come out behind. Well, not behind, but battling with Yvonne, where I believe he was battling with the likes of LB Lewis and Max Velocity for that third place, Sarah.
Yeah, doing a remarkable job so far. Um, got a bit of intel that the teamwork between Pedro and Midnight. Um, Midnight has let Pedro catch up a little bit and pitted a lap early to keep him within that slipstream range. So good communication between the two Nighthawk drivers there. As they kind of they're working together, but also they're managing their own race. But having a slipstream partner and a bump draft partner, is very key. Um, but as we see, the Dark Lord is just behind Yvonne at the moment, and it looks like Yvonne in that 911 It's struggling a little bit of top end speed compared to some of the other cars around here. But I think all drivers, doing remarkably well so far. I was just having a little look back to Koulios in P10, like we said in the sprint race, having struggling a little bit with that top end speed of the Subaru, but managing his own race, and he'll still pick up some crucial points. But I know obviously no driver likes to kind of just have got no company around him to really race, but he's doing a really good job so far.
Yeah, absolutely. You sometimes you have just got to stick it out and just get away the laps. Or maybe if you are by yourself, maybe put a little or on a track that doesn't really require much concentration, such as this. Oh, that's Rich coming from me after what happened to me in my race. Yeah, you probably just pop a. If you're someone like Kyrgios who's probably running around at the back, probably not gonna see many other people when it comes to overtaking. It might just be worth just popping a podcast on or something, could just whittling away the laps.
Yeah, maybe he's got the stereo on the car and he's having a kind of little party to himself. But yeah, no, it shows kind of the true racer in Kirk. He's managing to do his own race. He's going to pick up some good points. If he can just keep it going for the remainder of the laps. Obviously, we're already 24 on to 25 laps in, so nearly halfway, but not quite. But all the drivers settling nicely. Obviously, we've seen the first stint is over and done with for most of the drivers. Some drivers pitting a little bit earlier compared to some that are saving that little bit more fuel. But I don't know about you, but it's going to seem like it's going to be either a two-stop or a three-stop strategy around here, considering how high that tyre wear is, even on the hard tyres.
I mean, I'm not really too sure that tyre wear is much of a concern around here. I mean, I know running on red's not the greatest, and you have to be pretty careful when it comes to going around the corners. But I don't see any problem with running on fully red tyres around this place. I think your only real problem is fuel. I think some of the heavier drinking cars, such as Sophia in that Corvette, obviously we saw her coming at the end of lap 17, so maybe she's on a 3 or 4 stop. But drivers who can stretch the fuel out, so like your LB Lewis's and your Max Velocities, who went to the well, that was it. They pitted at end of lap 24. Or
I
end of lap
believe so.
23,
It was a
24.
few laps before, but on the subject of Max Velocity, he's not changed his tyres in his recent pit stop. He's only took a tank of fuel. So, like you say, trying to get the full life out of those hard tyres has jumped LB Lewis at the moment. But as you can see, LB Lewis right behind him on that fresh set of rubber does look quite fast. So I don't think it's going to take him too long to catch up to Max Velocity. So potentially, saved some time in the pits, but not necessarily in the race. Obviously, having a fresh set of rubber really does help around here.
Yeah. Um, I mean, say any little bit of time saving helps. Whether it be 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Maybe in a normal race that would be the strategy, but round here I think you really want to find a car to slipstream and work together to save fuel achieve a higher top speed by working together. Um, it's just teamwork is the way to go around here. Pretty much as we see Koulias about to go a lap down to Midnight and Pedro.
Yeah, just nice and moving out of the way. We'll try and benefit from the slipstream of Pedro just in front of him. But yeah, doing a good job, moving out of the way, letting the front runners through. But yeah, I think just having a quick look across the grid, we've seen the drivers being kind of spaced out just that a little bit more because of recent pit stops. Towards the end we might see the punch the pack bunch up a little bit. Is what I meant to say. But we've got our little battles brewing, but for the majority of it, it's the highlight is Midnight and Pedro battling it out, but also not battling it out, working together. And I think, teamwork does really make the dream work. And it just goes to show, Midnight and Pedro doing a remarkable job and have kind of set themselves completely out of the way of everyone else. It doesn't look like they're going to be affected too much from the other drivers, which I think it's just the nature of this track. If you've got a bit of breathing room, you're not going to see many cars unless you're either lapping them or an incident happens, or strategy calls will bunch the pack up a little bit. So I think it's a lonely race for some, unless obviously you're working with someone. But yeah, I think all in all, with me rambling on, I think all the drivers doing good job adapting to such a kind of a different style of racing than what a lot of us are used to.
Yeah. Uh, uh, there's not really much more I can add to that. I think we've summed it up really well. Um, yeah, I think teamwork, as we said before, teamwork is the way to make this race really work well for you. Um, so you've got two former Team Roblox drivers and fellow admins, Midnight and Pedro, working together now, probably for the foreseeable future, to save fuel, extend as much as they can into this race. Obviously, you got third and fourth place drivers in Max Velocity and LB Lewis also working together. Again, extend as far as they can. The fuel wise. And then we got fifth and sixth place drivers, Yvonne and Dark Lord working together. It seems like most drivers have the same idea as in what to do. It's just now pretty much sitting down and just waiting the race out until it's time to make a move or something. Or well, make a
Yeah,
move as we approach the last few laps. But that's probably got another 40 or so laps yet before drivers really start trying to defend their positions.
yeah, I think like you alluded to earlier, the middle part of the race, which we're kind of getting to now, or the middle stint, shall I say? A lot of drivers are they're not going to be fighting too much. This is the stage where we kind of just see their strategy plays out. Yes, they might have a few cars around them that they can slipstream off, especially the battles for P1, P2, P3, and P4. And a few like Coach, overtaking Sophie, but Sophie remaining in the slipstream of Coach. But yeah, I think it's just a different style of racing and different style of track than it's. It's literally all about teamwork. That's the one thing that we keep coming back to, purely because if the driver next to you or behind you is fast, you want to kind of stay with them. You want to kind of let their slipstream take you with them and try and set, personal best, get a good result. But I think on his red lobby debut, Max Velocity is kind of the standout driver at the moment. He's managing to keep with the front runners and is kind of setting himself up nicely for the next few rounds. Talking about the next rounds, obviously, we are over to Autopolis, which is kind of back to the more not normal. I don't want to offend, NASCAR or anything like that, but the kind of the more style of racing that a lot of the Nighthawk drivers are used to.
Yeah. It's we see Kyrgios pitting in at the end of lap 32. Only going about 32 laps between stints, as we also see Sophia come in as well to the pits. So our ninth and 10th place drivers are currently pitting in as Midnight and Pedro go around to start lap 34. Both looking about just over a quarter tank left, while the drivers behind in LB Lewis and Max Velocity have about half a tank left. Um, I think it's certainly be a close battle. I think possibly towards the end of the race with the amount of fuel LB Lewis and Max Velocity are saving compared to our first and second place drivers. So maybe this race, maybe we'll heat up a little bit more towards the end of this race.
Oh, 100%. I think after that kind of final pit stop, all the drivers will be fighting, not fighting, but you know what I mean, kind of trying to claim some really big points. But talking about big points, obviously, Max Velocity is in the slipstream of LB Lewis currently. But I think the potential not changing the tyres has affected his speed a little bit, not too much. Obviously, he's still in the slipstream of LB Racing in front of him, but he did let LB Racing through, and I think he's trying to capitalise on that slipstream as we see. I think that's Koulios in front of these two drivers here. So again, I think both LB Racing and Max Velocity will try to look to capitalise on Koulios's slipstream, even for a little bit. But I think just having a quick look at Sophia's Corvette. I think she might be on and one extra stop compared to the rest of the field, which obviously is a little bit of a shock compared, to last week. We saw how dominant Sophia was at the road course. It's kind of a completely different story for her this week, with the oval not being the best suited track for that Corvette.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this. No track ever suits one car 100% of the time. We see, we see sometimes where cars that aren't as quick normally able to shine at certain other tracks. Nothing comes to my mind right now. But yeah. You want to say it looks like Coach, and Yvonne have now back into, well, should I say Coach and Sophie are in this little battle for fifth now. Obviously, not sure. I won't quite pay attention to see how they fully caught up as I was riding on board with Midnight and Pedro at the front. But the two-way battle has turned into a four-way battle now. Although it looks like a few of the drivers may be pitting within a lap or two.
Yep, and it does look like Yvonne unfortunately does get a little bit of a connectivity issues, kind of a little bit of a lag spike there, which has sent her round, and with I'm not sure. I think she did pick up some damage as well, and that does drop her towards the back end of the grid and out of that little battle and pack she was in. But obviously Sophie pitting as well. Those two will kind of look to try and get out with each other to help each other again. But yeah, unfortunate for Yvonne. I think struggling a little bit with kind of lag issue, which is, we've all experienced it. It's very hard to kind of see where all the drivers are, and kind of which lines they're sticking to, especially when you're having these sort of issues. So both United Sim Team in the eSports drivers doing a remarkable job so far. But yeah, we see the drivers coming in for their second pit stop. We see the likes of Midnight Pedro, LB Racing, and Max Velocity staying out. Although when I say that, it's almost like the driver served me. Midnight and Pedro coming in with Midnight with 0% fuel, so cutting it fine, or planned perfectly. We will never know. Probably Midnight. It was planned perfectly, as we know he likes to have some unique strategies. But yeah, apart from that, it's just unfortunate for Koulios, that BRZ, and Sophia with the Corvette. But like you said, not every track is suited to every car. But we're over to Autop next, which should play in a little bit more favour of Koulios, as I know he's not a huge fan of the NASCAR style of racing. And going back to Midnight, like I say, either planned perfectly or he didn't look at that fuel dial and wasn't quite aware that he was running that low. Although it does look we have Coach and the Dark Lord coming out literally side by side, or kind of on top of each other there. It looks like the Dark Lord hasn't quite unghosted yet and is using, let's just say, taking Slipstream to a whole nother level with Coach here, as he finally does unghost. But yeah, coming out very closely to Coach there.
Yeah. The Dark Lord using some dark arts tactics to truly take advantage of the slipstream. Luckily, it seems like Sophie may have just been come out a little bit too far back now, and it's kind of lost touch to Coach and the Dark Lord to really take advantage of the slipstream. But it's been quite a good recovery though from Coach. Obviously, fell off the front pack early on in the race, but is now running up in fifth. After the pit stops from the likes of Yvonne and Sophie, seems like he's on a little bit of an upward trajectory this race, but I'm not sure how much further forward he can go. Um, but also, um, we've got one less pit stop, or slightly out of sync pit stops of LB Lewis and Max Velocity are paying them dividends again, as they are currently in front of Midnight Ice and Pedro after they've made their stop recently.
Yep, and it looks like Yvonne, trying to use the switch like and Pedro to the full benefit. LB Lewis looks like he's going to go at 4 lap round. And, so does Max Velocity. So, like you say, could pay dividends towards the end of the race. They're staying out just that little bit longer compared to the rest of the grid. The pit stop strategies of Pedro and Midnight might kind of put them on the, let's just say, the favourites to win. But yeah, I think obviously at the same time, the blue lobby will be going around and experiencing the overall as well. And I don't know about you, obviously personal experience, I found this race interesting to say the least. Obviously, we all know it's just turning left, but the teamwork, the strategy, and I know that having a driver that close to me, like behind me, it's always that thing, you want to look back, but also at the same time you don't. Because if you look back, your concentration level is going to kind of dip or spike. For me and Lee, that were quite close to each other for the majority of the race, like having a driver that close, I was worried about making a mistake myself.
Yeah. I know for me, when I was racing, it wasn't it wasn't the most exciting race. I think it was me and who is it? Can't remember off the top of my head. I think I'm not sure who it was, but I know for quite a bit of the race we were running together. And I think after a pit stop, I think they may have not taken tyres when I did, and it gave them a couple of seconds advantage of me. And after that, my race turned quite lonely. Um, until something unfortunate happened, which I don't really want to disclose because it will spoil the race for you. Um, yeah, an unfortunate incident happened during the race. But yeah, I find in a race like this, when you run by yourself, it really is almost like mentally taxing because although you don't want to, you want to focus on other things. You've always got to keep at least a little bit of concentration on this race, otherwise the worst can happen. Uh,
Yeah, like you say, if you are kind of racing around on your own, your concentration level is going to have to try and remain like 100%, but it is very difficult. Although the same goes, when you're going very close to another, again, the concentration level, not make any sort of mistakes, don't contact, too hard. It's quite difficult. I was just having a look at Dark Lord and Coach getting close to each other.
yeah, I mean they're just running together side by well, not running single file, just in the way the laps. Obviously, we're looking about 30 more laps to go. Um, So I think well, it's still the same for pretty much everyone. So we're just trying to whittle them laps down until they're the exciting 5 or so laps to go.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all kind of waiting for. See, kind of first, the final few shoot. With that stop of, they have split up a little bit, so no longer working as a team. As we see the likes of talking about teams as well, we see Yvonne and Sophie using the full width of the track, going side by side, kind of trying to stay within the description of Pedro and Midnight just in front of them. Although just in front, we still have that battle between Coach and the Dark Lord, and kind of both kind of lagging just that little bit. And I think they'll be looking behind to see the likes of Midnight and Pedro, closing and closing very fastly. But yeah, I mean, I know obviously we're only 47 laps in with max velocity coming in on 0% fuel as well. So drivers, to perfection or not looking at the dials. But kind of who's your standout driver so far?
Moment it's got to be let's definitely be obviously the teamwork being shown by Midnight Iso and Pedro. Two very good driving both of them. Very obviously, although they know each other well from working together, um, doing admin stuff for the league and as well as being former teammates for Team Roadblock. Certainly getting along very well during this race to try and maximise the results maximise the results for the both of them. As we see a little bit more desync problems there from Yvonne and Sophie. Um, we also but then also two other drivers that have impressed me quite a lot is Max Velocity and LB Lewis. Again, they've both been very impressive as well working together. It could possibly be a very good result. Maybe even a double podium for LB Lewis. Well, Max Velocity, barring any big mistakes, is still going to be up there as well. Though his tyres are very worn, so he's going to have to be maybe a little bit careful going around the corners. But definitely, and then Coach's recovery drive as well. That's also been very impressive. So the top five, you could say, have impressed me quite a lot. Obviously, Coach, as I said earlier on, dropping off the front pack early on during the race, but has managed to recover quite well.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And I think it's a very interesting strategy from Max Velocity. He's pitted a couple of times now, but has chosen not to take on any fresh rubber. So, like you say, I'm surprised there's any rubber left on those tyres now after 48 laps, near enough. Obviously, deciding to take on 100% fuel but no tyres, will that kind of hinder him going into this final stint? We shall see. But yeah, we have obviously the front runners of Pedro and Midnight. We have Coach, capitalizing on this at the moment, tucking up right behind the fellow Mercedes of Pedro, and that brings Dark Lord into it as well. So they're gonna have to be careful. Obviously, they don't want to kind of disrupt the front two, shall we say?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why going a lap down you couldn't benefit from the slipstream with the front two drivers. Obviously, any way to have a shorter race time is always going to give you a higher, well, give you chance at finishing in a higher position. And I think if coach in that can stay with coach can stay with the front two runners, no reason why he couldn't possibly. Oh, as we see LB Lewis getting all kinds of squirrely going around the banking, uh, going dropping beneath the I can't remember beneath the apron while trying to lap Kyrgios and picking up a half-second penalty, which isn't going to really help him out at all during this race. A bit of miscommunication there between the two drivers, obviously very easily done if they're not fully paying attention to the radar, which possibly could have happened. But back to what I was saying, back to what I was saying with Coach. Yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't take full advantage of leading cars, Sarah.
Yeah, and sorry to. I ju- Sophia coming into the pits but not taking on any fuel or tyres. I'm not quite sure. Obviously, maybe a slight mistake there, or kind of press the buttons a bit too fast, or some sort of technical issue going on. But that will see her kind of lose a lot of time, especially as we see the kind of the front runners making their way through. But yeah, unfortunate for Sophia there. Kind of a rare mistake that we see. But I did question because I did see the four red tires, and I was questioning she's not taking any more tires on. But then I saw the fuel as well. So yeah, unfortunately, that will drop her quite far below the likes of Sophie and Yvonne. Sorry, but just another word, obviously, on the driver's part. I've got to give it to Koulias. He is soldiering on, and he's doing the best with the kind of equipment of that Subaru as he can, and he's managing to kind of slipstream from the likes of the front runners, and he's driving superbly. When he's got the blue flag, he's always moving out of the way, making sure to not kind of disrupt the drivers in front of him. So he is doing a really good job. And it doesn't look like we have lost Sophia because of that pit stop thingy. So essentially, obviously she's getting she may get 50% of the points if she is well over halfway into the race. But yeah, unfortunately, a mistake from Sophia there, but I do see her drop out of the race.
See, I thought you never really like to see that. You never really really want to see drivers being forced to pull out for whatever reason, whether it be connection or a simple error. Um, but sometimes this stuff happens, and I'm sure we'll see a very strong round at Autopolis within the coming week or so.
Yeah, and it looks like the Dark Lord, aka Louis, has lost a lot of ground to Coach. Coach is glued to Pedro and Midnight at the moment, so he's lost the LB, not LB, Dark Lord. Sorry, has lost quite some ground to Coach, which I'm sure Coach will be very happy that he's managing to kind of match the pace of Pedro and Midnight.
I mean, it's not exactly difficult around this track. As long as you're within that slipstream, you never really gonna be fully off the pace, are you?
No, but so we've also lost a few drivers again here. I think we have lost Yvonne and Sophie. So again, getting well over halfway into the race, that will give them 50% of the points. But yeah, very unfortunate to see. They were running quite well. Obviously, we know that there was a few connection issues, a few rocket ship moments, shall we say. But I mean, well done for them, kind of sticking it out and getting 50% points, which again will help in the championship. But yeah, unfortunately, because of internet failure, we do see the two United Sim team and in eSports girls unfortunately dropping out. But hopefully, we'll see them back for Autopolis. But yeah, 7 drivers left at lap 54. Obviously, Midnight in P1, Pedro P2, Max Velocity P3, LB Lewis P, Coach in P5, Louis, aka the Dark Lord, in P6, with Koulias, soldiering it out in P7. And I think, unfortunate the disconnects, but obviously Koulias bumping himself up in the points. And it just goes to show, he's trying his best and he's going to pick up points because of it.
Yeah. Although he didn't have the most competitive car here today, he's kept himself in it. He's kept himself going around and managed to take full advantage of other people's unfortunate situations. And what would have been a P10 is now going to be a P7 because he's just kept going.
Yeah, and it kind of proved dividends, even if having the best of races, or the equipment that you've got isn't necessarily kind of the pace of the other cars around him. It just goes to show, don't give up. Some things may happen which kind of give you a little bit more opportunity to get higher points, or get a little bit of a better result than what he probably expected at the start. But obviously, as you can see by this beautiful shot here, Pedro and Midnight again, glued to each other, and they have been for 57 laps. I can't fault the two Nighthawk drivers, and literally, I think I've never seen a Mercedes and McLaren that close to each other, or except for Formula One, of course. But as we see, both of them coming into the pits, probably for their final pit stops. But it'll be interesting to see if they go on the same set of tyre. They've kind of offset themselves slightly faster, because this will be gearing them up for the final stint.
maybe a little bit of fuel saving required to do the is it 17 or 18 laps left, but yeah, so maybe a little bit of fuel saving required, but we've certainly seen them do more laps than what are left. On a well, I should say not them, but other drivers do more laps than what are left. What's left on the full tanks of fuel, such as your max velocities and your LB Lewis's. Um, yeah, I'm not sure which more to say, Sarah. Obviously, when we're getting in towards the final sprint towards the end now.
Yeah, that's
Oh, it looks
perfect way to put it.
like Coach Mao just slightly have lost the slipstream to the drivers in front to the front two drivers of Midnight Icer and Pedro, but he's gonna be. It looks like he's gonna be quite a nice little P5 finish now for him.
Yeah, I think Coach, especially in that previous stint, he made the best out of it. Tucking in between Pedro and Midnight, who kind of have been the net leaders for the majority of the race. So it will drop him back a little bit, but if he can kind of stay in or around them, um, but as we've got a little bit of time to fill, obviously, this does mark halfway into the season. I think we've had some good moments so far, and obviously many more to come as well. But obviously, we're going to be doing a lot of YouTube content, a lot of TikTok, Instagram. So if you haven't already, please follow Nighthawk Racing social media platforms. And I don't know about you, Kirk, but I'm enjoying season 3 so far. I think it's provided us with a lot of racing action, obviously different styles of racing. So overall, I think it's been a good first half and kind of something that all drivers should be proud of their results so far.
Absolutely, we've certainly seen a lot of well, everything. We've seen unexpected results. Certainly seen some impressive drives from all of our drivers. And I'm certainly well, even though we're halfway through the season already, but I'm sure in the second half we've still got plenty more of exciting on-track actions to across, um, come across, and incidents to report as well. You're never gonna get 100% clean. There's always gonna be action somewhere or other. But you just gotta stick it out and see what happens.
Yeah, and it does look like we have a retirement of the Dark Horse. Unfortunately, not picked up any more fuel or tyres. So yeah, unfortunate. But again, over 50%, it's gonna pick up some 50% points. But I think coming back, Max Horsey didn't look like he took on much fuel there. Sorry, that completely caught my attention there. Obviously going on the medium size, but it doesn't look like he picked up enough fuel. That was very quick
Yeah,
for a pit stop.
he's only got just about just over a quarter tank to get him about 15 laps. Oh, it's certainly gonna be a little bit close for comfort when it comes towards the end of this race, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a tactical underfueling or if it was kind of a mistake. But obviously, we know that McLaren fuel tank, it takes you about probably 18, 19 laps. So a quarter of a tank doesn't seem enough to get him to finish, unless he plays a little bit strategically, dips in behind Coach, who's just behind him currently. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, Kyrgios now P6. So again, just proven, soldiering on, done him well.
Yeah, that's all you really can do, isn't it? Just keep going, soldiering on, and take full advantage of people who disconnect or drop out or park it up. Which is to say a shame, um, because of that the disconnects. It maybe takes away a little bit of what coach has been able to do. This race, obviously, coach running up in P5. Which obviously as I said before, he fell down to P9. But he managed to do all them overtakes before everybody's disconnected. But now that everybody has like disconnected, it's going to maybe take a little bit of it, a little bit of the result away from him. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 100%. And sorry to interrupt you there, but Max Velocity back into the pits and takes on a lot more fuel, which will definitely try and get him towards the end. But that does bring LB Lewis back onto the podium. So, like you said earlier, potentially a double podium will be racing here. Unfortunately, just a little bit of a strategic kind of mishap from Max Velocity there.
Yeah. Um, yeah, they might have just passed that podium position to LB Lewis. You're not really what you not really what you want to happen. So it happens to the best of us at the most unfortunate at times. Um, it puts what is it puts max velocity about 15 or so seconds behind LB Lewis, and without slipstream or anything, I'm not really sure that's going to change that much. As we've got Midnight ISO and Pedro coming round the final corner, tick us down to about 10 laps to go, Sarah.
Yeah, and this could be, the 10 most exciting laps of this race because all the drivers, have pitted for their final time. They've put on a fresh set of rubber, the majority of them. They've now got enough fuel. So, fastest lap in the sprint and the feature at the moment does go to Max Velocity. So, it just goes to show, unfortunately, obviously, just outside the podium, but he is remarkably fast in that McLaren. And, it shows that he's got the pace, just unfortunately, just not being able to get on to the podium tonight. But, sets him up nicely for the next round, round number 6 at Autopolis. I know I've said it a few times now. By the time we get there, all the drivers will be sick of hearing that we're going to that track. But obviously, we're not quite sure that McLaren will be as strong as it is here. But it'll be interesting to see how well Max Velocity does. We all know he, especially the twisty turny tracks, he seems to excel at. But apart from that, like I say, all drivers having a kind of their standout moments of this race. Like I say, Coach dropping back earlier on in the race, but then working his way back up into P5, and a bit of a lonely race for him, but he's managed to be very consistent and work out his strategy. But I think you can't fault Midnight and Pedro. I know we've kept going back to them, but they've definitely winning the award for the closest racing pair over the entire race distance, shall we say. Obviously, we've got a few laps left, but I'm sure nothing's going to separate them now. It's going to be probably an IOU to Pedro. He's been a very good team player here. He's managed to help Midnight out massively, and also Pedro's going to pick up some major points here.
Absolutely, it's going to help him challenge for. I think his goal is what he wants to be is top 5 in the standings, and so certainly going to get big points here today to be able to help get that goal he wants in the standings, Sarah.
And I'm sure Pedro will be very grateful as well, obviously, because of how strong that McLaren round is. Is around here. He's managed to. Midnight has helped him out massively. Offering that slipstream for the entire race, and pitting a lap. Well, I think it was a lap earlier for Midnight, so they came out together again. So both helping each other out. And I think he, both drivers probably couldn't have done it alone. So they've worked well to each other.
Absolutely. Now, teamwork makes the dream work. If you know the saying.
100%. I
Yeah,
feel like we don't get to see it often around kind of the more traditional racing circuits. So to see it here, it's nice to see, but obviously in that kind of NASCAR style of racing, it goes to show, if you're set an alliance, so you've got some teammates that are willing to help you out, they can really put you in a good position. But yeah, it's good to see the drivers working so well with each other across the grid.
Oh. So now well, coming around the final corner on lap 69, um, taking us on to what, just about 6 laps to go. This is where we certainly seen we'll certainly be expecting people to start making the moves to overtake and to attack for their final finishing positions. Maybe not all that much to fight for for the rest of the pack, but between the likes of Midnight ISO and Pedro, it's a battle for the win.
Yeah, or they might be happy with the positions that they're in currently. They've held on for quite a few laps now, so why unsettle the balance, shall we say? But it just goes to show how well Midnight and Pedro work together. Potentially if LB Lewis and Max Velocity kind of synced their pit stops together ish, we might have seen them a lot closer than what they are now. And obviously, I think the Dark Lord did pay dividends to that. He got in between the two McLarens, disrupted the kind of the train that they were on. So yeah, unfortunate for a few drivers, but I think all drivers should be proud of their performance. And like I say, unfortunate of a few disconnects that we did have, but I think most drivers here they'll definitely get points for what they've done. And I think it's gonna be like Marmite. I think some of the drivers are gonna love this style of racing. Some are gonna absolutely hate it. But kind of seeing from the Red Lobby's drivers, it seems that it's gone down pretty well, this style of racing. So I'm sure they'll be very happy to kind of see the traditional tracks again from next week.
Mm. I think although we are missing maybe quite a few of the usual front runners, it's certainly like mixed up the grid, if you know what I mean. Obviously, we're seeing drivers who maybe usually aren't towards the front at the front. Um, so if it brings mixed up racing as it is, I think there's yeah, bring on more races like this. I think maybe little caveat is. Maybe either a few less laps or do it in stages, similar to what NASCAR do where we do maybe 30 laps and then we neutralize the race and bring everybody back together and reward like points based on position per stage. If you know what I'm saying.
I thought we were gonna go and do the Daytona 500 next. Maybe that's for another year or kind of another. You know, we need to get this season done first before we think of doing the endurance style NASCAR driving. But kind of going back to the drivers and how they probably be feeling at the moment. Like you said earlier, your calculations they would have probably well have driven over at least over 100 miles of this track tonight. I'm sure they'll be excited to see the back of it for a little while at least. But the concentration levels that these drivers have had to maintain for these 75 laps, especially the likes of Midnight and Pedro being so close to each other, their concentration, making sure that they don't kind of ruin each other's race, probably be at an all-time high. And physically, obviously Pedro is a mainly controller driver, where Midnight is a wheel user. So obviously Midnight will probably be physically feeling a little bit more in pain than Pedro. But I think mentally and physically, this was probably one of the toughest races. That doesn't it doesn't seem very difficult to drive around in circles and just turn left. But the physicality and the mental kind of strength that these drivers are going to need. Um, just goes to show that I think their points will be well deserved tonight.
Absolutely. As if you want me to take away the final lap of this race, as Midnight ISO leads us on to the final lap of this race. This is where we're going to see our drivers battle for the win of this race. As Pedro sticking behind for now, maybe looking to strike maybe later in the lap. You see, if I'm in Pedro, maybe I'm dropping off ever so slightly now, maybe taking a wider line, try and slingshot off the final corners. Pedro is still helping Midnight ISO along for now. As we see, we got a lapped car coming up. I believe that is Koulias in the BRZ. It is, as we now see Pedro looking to possibly go around the outside, but here we are, Koulias. Koulias may give Midnight that little boost of slipstream he needs to be able to win this race. As we see Pedro go wide to get that little slipstream. Midnight keeping it tight to the apron as he comes across the line to win here at Daytona at the Oval, with Pedro taking second, Max Velocity taking fourth, Koulias confirming his fifth, with LB Lewis taking third and Coach taking fifth, Sarah. Um,
Yeah,
maybe a little bit exciting of a final lap there as we see Midnight ISO and Pedro almost finishing side by side there at the end there.
yeah, a very near photo finish for the two Midnight and Pedro. Obviously, like you say, Koulias in a prime position to see that happening. But I think it just goes to show how that I think Pedro respected that Midnight's been in the lead for the majority of the race. But I think all the drivers, teamwork. Teamwork is a dream work. What else can I say? But yeah, a near on photo finish for the front two, and you can't take anything from LB Lewis as well. He's stuck in third. Obviously, a little battle between himself and Max Velocity. And talking about Max Velocity, I'm sure he'll be very happy with a P4, considering um, the pit stop error with taking on not enough fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've had a few DNFs. There's something to take away from. He's still beating the likes of Coach and Koulias. Obviously, being newly promoted for this round, it certainly seems like he's probably going to stay up in Red Lobby for next week at Autopolis, which a bit more slightly more technical track than Daytona Oval. But I'm certainly interested to see what he can pull off there.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I'm excited to see. This will be probably one of the first races that we've seen under the new physics at a more traditional circuit. So we'll see some cars and some drivers, play to their strengths, and a few, might still be affected by that lack of top end speed. But hopefully, going into next week, all the drivers will be a little bit kind of more comfortable with Autopolis. Although we've all been there, we've all raced there. It's quite a difficult track to handle, especially that first kind of corner where if you get it wrong, you're going into the sand. At least here, you had a few walls that you could bounce off of if you needed to. Although I don't think many drivers did. So all in all, I think it was a good day for the drivers, and Midnight, coming away with a feature race win. It's been a while since we've seen him pick up a win, so I think he'll be very happy indeed that he managed to pull it off. And obviously, a big thank you to Pedro as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, first and second place. Um, as we say, as I was saying before, it's gonna be a very big haul of points for Pedro. And obviously Midnight, first time in a long while where he's actually won a red lobby race. Obviously took full advantage of some of the quicker drivers such as Swizzy and Katie Kine not being here and present tonight, and as well as working with Pedro to achieve the best result for both of them. Um, Kept it clean even in the final few laps. They avoided contact with each other, and they both drove a very good race working together, and in the end, they both got the result they deserved to their teamwork.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And obviously, all the DNF drivers as well, they do get 50% points. So, all drivers coming away from tonight with points, with quite a lot of points. So, all the drivers across the grid, it will help for the championship going into the second half of the championship. Um, but yeah, it was obviously a different style of racing, which meant we didn't see kind of the action that we're used to seeing, the kind of the overtakes, the kind of undercutting, the overcutting on the strategy calls. But I think it was unique. The NASCAR style of racing isn't for everybody, but I think all the drivers did a really good job. And yeah, I think we can't fault all the drivers here. They did a pretty good job, and I'm excited to see them back in action for Autopolis. But I think that rounds off tonight. Like I said earlier, I'm sure the drivers will be, happy to see the back of Daytona. Obviously, we spent 2 weeks here. Slightly different course, the road course to the oval, but I'm sure the drivers will be happy to see a slight change of scenery. But
Really
before we go,
going across the world to Japan, aren't we?
we
Quite
are
right.
indeed slightly different track, obviously. But before we go, um, who are we giving driver of the day? Because I feel
Um,
it's gonna be tough. But I have one in mind. I have two in mind, actually. To be fair, it's gonna be hard. But I'll let you go first.
oh, I think personally, um, probably going to be LB Lewis. LB Lewis is probably going to be my driver of the day, just because he took full advantage in the sprint race, and managed to not make any mistakes, kept it clean, take the win in the sprint race, and again avoided all the troubles and silly mistakes to finish third in the each race, to get third place and get maximum results of what he could have achieved. I think maybe if he was working if he was working together with Pedro and Midnight, like them two were, he probably would have been up there with them two as well, and would probably challenge for the win here in the feature race as well.
Yeah, definitely in contention. I was probably gonna go or even Midnight or Pedro. I think I'm gonna give it to Pedro. Although obviously Midnight coming away with a feature race win. Um, Pedro having to stare at the back of Midnight's McLaren for 75 laps is no easy task. So I'm going to give my driver of the day to Pedro. Definitely, a top team player, and definitely, right strategy calls at the right time. Kept himself with Midnight and managed, help Midnight with that win, but also coming away with the second. And yeah, I mean, having to stare at the butt of that McLaren, I'm going to give it to Pedro. I'm sure Pedro will hopefully want to get in front of Midnight next week so he doesn't have to look at the back of that McLaren again.
I'm sure he'll be itching to take the fight to Midnight next week.
But yeah, I think that rounds us perfectly off. Obviously, great racing from all of the drivers tonight. Obviously, making our job just that a little bit more difficult, the NASCAR style of racing. But I enjoyed it. It's a slightly different style, like we've said probably a million times by now. But off to obviously the blue lobby as well. The commentary will I think they'll enjoy the blue lobby. I think me and Kirk definitely had some fun. So make sure to tune in for both the red and the blue lobby. And we will see you next week for Autopolis. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been different, but all in all, shake and bake.
Absolutely shake and bake indeed.
Round 5 and the second race of the doubleheader at Daytona, this time at the Daytona Oval. I think it gave us quite an interesting challenge this time in terms of strategy, but in a different way, because it not only depended mostly how you were able to save fuel in this one, but also whether you had someone else to work with and, yeah, do some teamwork. And I must say that I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity for this event in qualifying with both Louis and Yvonne and in the races with Midnight. I think that teamwork was crucial for me to be able to get these results. Certainly think that I maximized everything I could. I think in the sprint race, LB Lewis was just out of reach, I'd say, for the amount of laps we've gotten given the circumstances we had at the beginning of the race. Then in qualifying, I don't think I could have done much more. And if anything, I'm happy that I managed to finish in the top three. And then in the feature race, at some point, I was working with Midnight throughout the entire race, and we were paying lots of attention to the cars that were around us, especially the McLarens who were lightning quick. And yeah, as soon as we saw the offset in the strategies between us two and then people like LB Lewis and Max Velocity, it got to a point of the race on which we just thought that the race was ours to lose, basically. I think we worked the strategy perfectly. And yeah, just really want to thank him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get the sets of results in those races as well. And yeah, hope everyone had a good time. I know that unfortunately the BOP from the last update really shuffled the order in terms of the car's performance at this track. And I think BOP wasn't perfect for this type of racing. But yeah, I want to shout out especially people like Kulios and Bertie, who were clearly in two of the slowest cars, but they persevered. And yeah, I'm very much happy that they got to the end. Obviously, knowing that the car was obviously not to their liking and maybe to the performance levels they were hoping for in order to get the results they wanted. Yeah, I'm already looking forward to the next round at Autopolis. It's a very demanding and challenging track, can be very unforgiving as well if you make any sorts of mistakes. And one especially where consistency is key, but also very difficult to achieve there. But yeah, I hope I can get some good results. I think obviously trying to get better results than what I was able to get when we first raced there all the way back in season one. As I quite like this track, but I know it's going to be especially difficult given the tire wear and yeah, it's not easy to manage around there. But yeah, want to thank everyone who took part in this event at Daytona first. I'm already looking forward to seeing all of you back on track again.
Well, what can I say? The double header at Daytona has definitely been a two halves kind of deal for me. The first one at the road course was a bit of a, I'm not gonna say disappointment, but it was definitely tough. But to come away this one with a podium in the sprint and then a feature race win is, well, it's been an incredible event for me. So yeah, thank you very much to my partner in crime for this one, which would be Pedro, one of my roadblock partners from the TTR racing days and beyond. I mean, we've spent so long together now, from CRT to SRF, TTR, and now Nighthawk, that I think we've grown as a pairing, and thanks to that teamwork, we definitely came away with dual good results here. At very least, a double podium for both. So absolutely incredible, especially for the points and championship wise. But the sprint race, we were a little bit lucky. We were in a battle for third to fifth for quite a long majority of it. And when Sophia dropped off, went with the Corvette with the fuel issue, we then got a gap to the rest of the pack. And then Max's tyres out front went, so he fell back through the pack, and we were catching LBR Racing Lewis. And a couple more laps we would have caught him, but that's obviously not the game. It's about a 15-minute race. But yeah, Lewis came away with the win, so congratulations to Lewis on that one. And obviously a double podium for me and Pedro, which was great, even just to start the event. Qualifying itself, I've got to give Coach an absolute round of applause, because we basically slipstream and teamed up and got up to 4th and 5th between us. which put us in a good stead for the start of the race. But obviously, my plan was to not be starting at the front, because that's the last thing I wanted. I wanted to take the opening couple of laps fairly gently and work my way forwards, knowing that the Mclaren was very good on fuel and top speed, which is the two qualities you want on an oval. So shake and bake on that one. But we were a little bit lucky again. Me and Pedro found each other on the same bit of track, and then just about got a gap to the guys behind, who weren't quite working as well as a team. But again, we'd briefed each other on what we were going to do here, so we were going in with a plan. But as soon as we had that gap, we went for it. We decided to use more fuel than be efficient, just to get that gap. And then coming into the first stop, I had more fuel than Pedro, but to keep the team together, I pitted a lap early, and then we just ran from there. We were in constant communication. I told Pedro to turn down his fuel mixture down to turn 3, which we agreed to do together, and Pedro played an absolute blinder, and I'm suspecting at the end of that race he could draw the back of the Mclaren, because without him we would not have got away from the pack, because they were very, very quick, particularly those McLarens in Max Velocity and LBR Racing Lewis. So again, full credit to Pedro on this one. I'm going to call it, it's not just a victory for me, but it's a victory for our team. So congratulations to Pedro. Well done to everyone on track, because quite frankly the racing in Red Lobby in this one was sublime. There was no moments where I felt like any reporting was necessary, and we had a good race. It would have been nice to see more people on the track, but obviously that happens sometimes. But all I can say is there was a lot of scepticism about this race being any good. I know I'm viewing it from a personal perspective, but I think it worked really, really well. We might perhaps think about doing that for a future calendar race again. But yeah, coming away with the win, 74 thousandths from Pedro, and again, I can only call it a team win. So quite frankly, there was a race back in, I think it was 99 in F1, I want to say Hockenheim, where Eddie Irvine and Mika Salo were absolutely stretching away at the front, and Salo gave the win to Eddie, and then Eddie at the end of it said, well, he's getting the trophy. So Pedro, you're getting the metaphorical trophy on this one. You made it happen, and well done to everyone else in the lobby for such a clean race. But looking forward to Autopolis, complete opposite, but hey, it's going to be fun. Let's do this. Good luck to everyone in the rest of the championship, and onwards.